Days passed as Susan and Zara worked together collecting samples from the forest. The alien visitor showed particular interest in human cellular structure, asking Susan many questions about human biology. Susan shared her knowledge freely, explaining concepts she had studied in her years as a biologist. She even allowed Zara to take a small sample of her hair and skin cells, which the alien examined with fascination. What Zara did not reveal was the true reason for her interest. The Valerians were dying. A strange disease had begun affecting their planet 50 years ago. It started slowly at first, affecting only plant life. But soon it spread to their atmosphere, making the air toxic. In the last decade, their population had decreased by 30%. Scientists predicted complete ecosystem collapse within 20 years, unless a solution was found. Their last hope came when researchers discovered that human DNA contained a unique protein sequence that might help create a cure. When combined with Valerian technology, this human element could potentially repair their damaged atmosphere. The Council had sent Zara, their most skilled genetic researcher, on this desperate mission. On the 5th day of their work together, Susan invited Zara to her small cabin on the edge of the forest. It was risky bringing the alien to a more populated area, but they needed better equipment than what Susan could carry to the woods. "My cabin is private. No close neighbors. Zara can adjust her appearance to look more human if someone does see her," Susan thought as they walked along a seldom used path. Zara had indeed improved her human disguise. She now appeared as a tall woman with pale skin and unusual, but not impossible, violet eyes. Her white hair could pass for platinum blonde, and she wore clothes Susan had brought her: simple jeans and a sweater. Her mannerisms were still somewhat formal, but not enough to draw serious attention. The cabin was small but comfortable. A main room with a kitchen area, a separate bedroom, and a bathroom. Susan had converted half the main room into a simple laboratory with a microscope and basic research equipment, leftovers from her university days. Zara looked around with interest at the human dwelling. The structure seemed inefficient to her with its square angles and separate rooms, but she appreciated the warmth and what humans called coziness. The wooden walls, the soft furniture, the small decorative items that served no practical purpose but somehow made the space feel like what Susan called home. Susan watched as Zara examined everything with childlike curiosity. The alien ran her fingers over book spines, studied photographs, and sniffed at scented candles. It was strange to see someone experience such ordinary things for the first time. "Are you hungry?" Susan asked. "I can make us something to eat." Zara had been consuming nutrient solutions from her ship, but was curious about human food. Their research had suggested most Earth food would be compatible with Valerian biology. "I would like to try human food." "Yes." Susan prepared a simple meal of vegetable soup and bread. Zara watched the process with fascination, asking questions about each ingredient and tool. When they sat to eat, Zara mimicked Susan's movements, holding the spoon awkwardly at first. Her first taste of the soup produced a look of surprise. "This is pleasant. The flavors are stronger than our food. Much stronger. But good." They ate together, talking about the differences in their worlds. Susan learned that Valerians lived in communal groups rather than families, that they typically lived for 300 Earth years, that their society had no concept of war, having evolved past violent conflict thousands of years ago. Zara learned that humans still fought wars, that they formed strong family bonds, that their lives were remarkably short yet intensely lived. She found herself drawn to Susan's stories of childhood, of college adventures, of loves found and lost. The emotional richness of human life was something her people had sacrificed in their pursuit of logic and science. After dinner, they sat by the small fireplace. Zara staring into the flames. "Fire is forbidden on my world," she said softly. "Too dangerous to our atmosphere. We create heat and light through safer methods, but this is beautiful. The movement is never the same." "Twice." Susan nodded. "I always loved campfires. There's something primal about fire, something that connects us to our ancestors." As the evening progressed, their conversation deepened. Zara found herself sharing more than she had intended, telling Susan about her world's troubles, Not everything, but enough that Susan began to suspect there was more to Zara's visit than simple scientific curiosity. "Your world is sick," Susan said finally. "It's not just research, is it? You need something from Earth, something to help your people." Zara looked away briefly, then met Susan's eyes. "I was not authorized to reveal our situation, but yes, our world is dying. Our atmosphere is breaking down. Our people are becoming ill. We need help." Susan reached out, touching Zara's hand, surprised by its warmth. "Why didn't you just ask for help?" Zara sighed, a very human gesture she had adopted. Our council feared humans would not help, or worse, would see our weakness as an opportunity. "We have observed your wars, your conflicts, your treatment of your own planet. We were uncertain." Susan understood the concern, but she felt hurt by the deception. "I would have helped anyway. You didn't need to hide the truth." "I see that now," Zara admitted. "We may have misjudged humans. Or perhaps you are exceptional among your kind." The next morning, Susan woke to find Zara already working at the small lab table. She had combined her own advanced technology with Susan's simple equipment, creating something that looked like a cross between a tablet computer and a microscope. She was analyzing the human cellular samples. Susan watched silently for a moment. Zara's long fingers moved with precision. Her face showed intense concentration. There was something beautiful about her alienness, Susan realized. Not despite her differences, but because of them. Zara sensed Susan watching and looked up. "I believe I have found what we need. A protein sequence in your cellular structure. It is exactly what our scientists predicted, but I need more samples. Different human genetic backgrounds, to be certain." Susan considered this. "Is that why you came to Earth, for our DNA?" "Yes," Zara admitted. "We need to create a biological agent that can repair our atmosphere. Your genetic material contains elements our scientists believe can be adapted for this purpose. How many samples do you need? More than I can collect alone," Zara said, "and from diverse human genetic backgrounds." Susan thought for a moment. "I can help with that. I have friends, former colleagues who would help. Without revealing your identity, we could collect samples, call it a research project." Zara looked concerned. "More humans involved increases risk of discovery." Susan shook her head. "These are people I trust, scientists who understand the importance of research, and we don't have to tell them everything, just enough to get the samples you need." That evening they formulated a plan. Susan would contact 3 former colleagues from the research lab, people she trusted, people who owed her favors. She would tell them she was working on a private research project analyzing human genetic diversity. They would help collect samples from different populations without knowing the true purpose. While Susan made calls, Zara returned briefly to her ship to send an update to her world. The message was simple: progress being made, human assistance secured, estimated completion of sample collection. On Earth Week, when she returned, Susan had good news. "I've arranged everything. My friend Olivia works at a university lab. She can provide anonymized samples from their database. My former professor, Dr. Howard, has connections with researchers worldwide. He can get us samples representing different ethnic backgrounds. And my colleague Patty works with a genealogy company. She has access to thousands of DNA profiles." Zara felt something unfamiliar, a swelling emotion that took her a moment to identify. Hope. For the first time since beginning this mission, she truly believed it might succeed. The next few days were busy. Susan and her friends collected samples from various sources, all delivered to the cabin. Zara worked tirelessly analyzing the genetic material, looking for the specific protein sequences her world needed. Susan watched in amazement as Zara used her advanced technology to process in minutes what would take human labs weeks. They fell into a comfortable routine, working together during the day, sharing meals and conversation in the evenings. Susan teaching Zara about human culture, music, literature, art. Zara explaining Valerian science, philosophy, society. 2 beings from different worlds finding common ground on the 7th night. As they sat beside the fire, Zara looked troubled. "What is it?" Susan asked. Zara hesitated, then spoke. "My mission is nearly complete. I have all the samples I need. Our scientists can now develop the cure for our world. Susan felt a strange sadness. So you'll be leaving, yes. But there is something I have not told you. The full truth of my mission. Susan waited as Zara gathered her thoughts. The solution. Our scientists envision. It would require humans and Valerians to work together. A permanent alliance between our worlds. What kind of alliance? A sharing of knowledge, technology, cultural exchange, Zara explained, and eventually, perhaps migration. A small number of my people would need to come to Earth. Our world may not be salvageable, even with the cure, and we need a new home for some of our population. Susan understood the implications. This was bigger than just collecting samples. This was first contact preparation for diplomatic relations between worlds. That's why you were sent to judge if humans would be willing to help to see if we could be trusted. The small silver ship cut through the night sky like a falling star, before slowing to hover above the pine forest. Zara checked her instruments one final time, before selecting a small clearing for landing. The craft descended silently between tall trees, coming to rest on soft earth. Its outer shell glowed faintly blue in the darkness, illuminating the surrounding woods. Inside the craft, Zara took a deep breath. Her journey across 12 galaxies had been long and tiring, but now she had arrived. On Earth, the planet her people had studied from afar for centuries. Her mission was critical. The future of her entire species, the Valerians, depended on her success. Their homeworld was dying, poisoned by a mysterious disease that destroyed their atmosphere, and only human genetic material could provide the key to creating a cure. Zara stood and stretched her tall, slender body. Her skin had a subtle blue tint that seemed to shimmer slightly in certain light. Her eyes were large and violet, set in a face that was almost but not quite human. Her white hair flowed down past her shoulders, seeming to move slightly as if underwater. She wore a form-fitting silver suit that adjusted to her body temperature and monitored her vital signs. She gathered her sample collection equipment and prepared to exit the ship. A final check of the planet's atmosphere confirmed it was breathable for her, though slightly uncomfortable. The gravity would be stronger than she was used to, but her body could adapt. She had trained for this mission for years. The door of the craft slid open silently. Zara stepped onto Earth soil for the first time. The cool night air felt strange against her skin. The scents of pine sap, soil, and distant water filled her senses. She looked up at the unfamiliar stars. The constellations were exactly as she had studied them, but seeing them with her own eyes was different somehow. More real. Her scanner indicated a human settlement, 5 miles to the north, but there was a single human much closer. Zara hesitated. According to mission protocols, she should avoid contact with humans initially until she could better understand their behaviors and language. But her scanner showed this human was alone. Perhaps this was an opportunity to observe one up close. Susan Miller had come to the woods to clear her head. After losing her job at the research lab last month, she needed time away from the city to think about her future. At 32, she had thought her career as a biologist was on track, but budget cuts had left her unemployed and questioning her path. A weekend alone camping in the forest seemed like the perfect way to reset. She had just added another log to her small campfire when she saw a blue flash in the sky, at first thinking it was lightning. But there had been no sound, and the light had moved in a controlled way before disappearing behind the trees. Several minutes later, she saw a faint blue glow coming from the same direction. Curiosity overcame caution. Susan grabbed her flashlight and jacket and headed toward the strange light. She moved carefully through the woods, following the soft blue glow that seemed to pulse gently between the trees. As she got closer, she switched off her flashlight, not wanting to announce her presence to whatever was causing the light. Susan froze when she reached the edge of a small clearing. There in the center stood what could only be an alien spacecraft. It was smaller than she would have imagined, about the size of a small car. Its smooth silver surface reflected the moonlight and emanated a soft blue glow. But what made Susan gasp was the figure standing beside it. The being was humanoid and female in appearance, but clearly not human. Her height nearly 7 feet tall. Her blue-tinted skin and those eyes large and violet seemed to look directly into Susan's. Zara sensed the human before seeing her. The emotional response registered clearly on her biosensor, a mixture of fear, wonder, and curiosity. Turning slowly, Zara faced the direction where Susan hid among the trees. "You can come out, I will not harm you." Zara's voice was melodic with an accent Susan couldn't place. Susan considered running, but where would she go? And would she ever forgive herself for missing this opportunity? Heart-pounding, she stepped out from behind the tree into the clearing. The two females from different worlds studied each other. Their differences were obvious, but so were their similarities. Both stood on two legs, both had two arms with hands and fingers. Both had faces with eyes that could show emotion. "How do you speak English?" Zara smiled, the corners of her mouth turning up in a gesture she'd practiced. "I have been studying your languages and cultures for many years. We have devices that help us learn quickly." Susan took a hesitant step forward. "Why are you here?" Zara considered how much to reveal. "My people are scientists, explorers. We study other worlds. Not the whole truth, but not a lie either." "Are there more of you here?" Susan asked, looking around nervously. "No, I am alone on this mission," Zara replied. "I am here to collect samples of Earth biology." Susan moved closer now, just 20 feet from the alien. "Why Earth?" Zara looked up at. "The night sky Earth is unique in many ways. Your planet has more biological diversity than most worlds we have studied. My people believe we can learn much from your ecosystems." Again, not entirely false, but not her complete mission. Susan introduced herself. Susan Miller. "A biologist." Actually, Zara nodded. "This is fortunate, perhaps. Our meeting is unexpected, but may be beneficial. I am called Zara." Susan could hardly believe she was having a conversation with an alien life form. Her scientific mind raced with questions. "Where is your world? How did you travel here? What is your biology like?" Zara answered carefully, sharing basic information about her home planet. Valeria, located in what humans would call the Andromeda Galaxy. She explained, their advanced technology allowed for faster-than-light travel through what humans might understand as wormholes. As they talked, the initial fear faded. Susan sat on a fallen log while Zara perched gracefully on a rock. Their conversation continued. For hours, Susan explaining human societies and Zara sharing carefully selected information about her own species. When the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, Zara stood. "I must secure my ship. It cannot be discovered by other humans." Susan understood the implications. If others found Zara, there would be panic, government intervention possible, military response. "Who knows? I won't tell anyone, I promise." "But what will you do now?" Zara considered for a moment. "I need to collect biological samples I need to study. Your forests, water, soil. Would you help me?" Susan Miller. "You understand this world in ways I do not." Susan didn't hesitate. "Yes, I will help you. I know these woods well. I can show you places to collect samples. Places where other humans rarely go." Zara smiled. "Thank you. This is more than I hoped for when I arrived." They agreed to meet again that evening. Susan would bring supplies, food, and maps. Zara would bring her collection equipment. As Susan walked back to her campsite, the reality of what had happened began to sink in. She had met an alien from another world. She was going to help her collect samples. She wondered briefly if she should contact someone, authorities, scientists, but who would believe her? And what might happen to Zara if she did? No, she would keep this secret. At least for now. Back at her ship, Zara sent a brief encrypted message to her homeworld. First contact achieved. Unexpectedly positive, proceeding with primary mission. That night when they met, again Susan brought a backpack with supplies. Zara had changed her appearance slightly. Her height reduced to 6 feet. Her skin tone adjusted to appear more human, though still pale. Her eyes still violet but smaller. She wore simpler clothing that Susan had described as normal. They set out together into the forest, Susan leading the way to a small stream where various plant species grew. Zara collected samples, carefully placing them in containers that would preserve them perfectly. She explained how each sample would be analyzed at the molecular level. Their conversations flowed easily. Susan was surprised by Zara's sense of humor and her curiosity. Zara was impressed by Susan's intelligence and openness. They worked well together, Zara showing Susan technology beyond human development. Susan showing Zara the subtle complexities of Earth's ecosystems. Neither realized that their unexpected meeting was the beginning of something much larger than either could imagine, something that would change both their worlds forever. Susan barely slept that night. Her mind raced with the implications of Zara's revelation, an alliance between Earth and Valeria, alien visitors living among humans, the sharing of advanced technology that could transform her world, but also the risks, fear, panic, conflict between nations over who would control this new relationship. Morning found her sitting on the porch of her cabin, watching the sunrise. Zara joined her, silently respecting her need to think. "Have your people ever done this before?" Susan asked finally. "Made contact with another species?" Zara nodded 3 times. "But never with a world as divided as yours." The other species had unified planetary governments, singular voices that could speak for their entire populations. Earth is different. Your nations compete. Your ideologies clash. Your resources are unevenly distributed. Susan couldn't argue with that assessment, even if she helped arrange meetings with American officials. What about Russia, China, India, the European Union? How would they react to being left out of first contact? And what about religious leaders? How would they respond to proof of intelligent life beyond Earth? And yet the opportunity was too important to ignore. The benefits too great. Not just the advanced technology, though that would be revolutionary, but the knowledge, the cultural exchange, the expansion of human understanding, the chance to save a dying civilization. Susan looked at Zara. The alien had become something more than a scientific curiosity, a friend. Someone Susan cared about deeply despite their differences. Perhaps that was the answer, focusing on similarities rather than differences. Building relationships person by person before attempting world-changing announcements. "I have an idea," Susan said, "but it will take time." "More than 3 days?" Zara looked concerned. "The ship is programmed to return. My people will think I failed, or that humans captured me. Then send a message." Susan suggested, "Tell them you've made progress but need more time. Tell them you need to extend the mission." Zara considered this. The council might agree. "If I explain the potential, a limited extension might be possible." "What's your plan?" Susan asked. Susan explained her thinking. "Start small. Build a network of trusted humans, scientists, artists, teachers, people from diverse backgrounds who could handle the truth about Zara, people who could help prepare the way for wider contact. Each person carefully selected, each disclosure carefully managed, a slow expansion of awareness rather than a sudden revelation. It could take months," Zara said. "Maybe years." Susan nodded, but it would be safer, more controlled, less likely to cause panic or conflict. Zara agreed to try. She returned to her ship to send a detailed message to the Valerian Council requesting a mission extension, explaining Susan's plan and the potential benefits of this careful approach. While waiting for a response, they continued their work. Susan contacted more colleagues, people she believed would react well to the truth about Zara. Each conversation was carefully planned, each potential ally assessed for their reliability, their discretion, their potential contribution to the growing network. The first to be told was Dr. Elaine Bennett, a xenobiologist, who had spent her career theorizing about alien life. Susan invited her to the cabin, explaining only that she had made a discovery that would change everything. Elaine arrived skeptical but open-minded. Susan began carefully showing Elaine the genetic samples they had collected, explaining the research without revealing its source. When Elaine started asking the right questions, showing genuine curiosity without fear, Susan nodded to Zara, who had been waiting in the bedroom. The door opened and Zara stepped out, her appearance fully alien. Her disguise removed, Elaine's reaction was everything they had hoped for. Initial shock, followed by amazement. Then a flood of questions. Scientific, practical, reasonable. She did not panic, she did not reach for her phone to call authorities or media. She simply stared in wonder, then began to engage. "You are truly not from Earth." Elaine whispered, her voice steady. Despite her obvious excitement, "I am from a world you would call Valeria." Zara replied. 12 galaxies from here. The three of them talked for hours, Elaine asking questions, Zara answering Susan, mediating. The conversation flowed from biology to culture to philosophy. By evening, Elaine was fully committed to their cause, agreeing to help identify other scientists who might react similarly. "This can work," Elaine said as she prepared to leave, "but we need to be extremely careful about who we tell." Next, I'd suggest Alan West, the astronomer. He's been arguing for the probability of intelligent alien life for decades. Had be perfect for this. 2 days later, they received a response from the Valerian Council. After much debate, they had agreed to extend Zara's mission by 6 Earth months. She would be provided with additional resources, including communication technology that would allow more regular contact with her homeworld. The Council was cautiously optimistic about Susan's approach. With the pressure of immediate departure removed, Susan and Zara implemented their plan methodically. Over the next few weeks, they brought 5 more people into their circle, each chosen with care, each disclosure planned meticulously. A physicist, an anthropologist, a linguist, a diplomat recently retired from the State Department, and a renowned science fiction author whose stories had always portrayed alien contact as beneficial. Each new ally brought unique perspectives and resources. Alan West, the astronomer, provided access to private observatory facilities where Zara could communicate with her ship without risk of detection. Maria Lopez, the linguist, began documenting the Valerian language, creating a framework for future translators. The retired diplomat, George Kennedy, offered insights into how various governments might react, suggesting potential first contacts within official channels. Their network grew slowly but steadily, each new member vetted by the entire group before inclusion. Each addition expanding their capabilities. Their discussions became more sophisticated as they began planning for wider disclosure. A small scientific journal article perhaps hinting at new discoveries about extraterrestrial biology. Without explicit claims, just enough to prepare the scientific community for what would come later. Zara found herself increasingly comfortable among humans, her initial scientific detachment giving way to genuine connection. She learned to laugh at jokes, to enjoy music, to appreciate art. She began to understand human emotion, not just as a biological response, but as a valid way of experiencing the world. Susan watched this transformation with fascination. The alien who had arrived so formal, so logical, was developing what could only be described as humanity, not becoming human exactly, but finding the parts of herself that resonated with human experience. Their relationship deepened as well. Beyond friendship, beyond scientific collaboration, there was an intimacy in their shared secret, their shared purpose, their private conversations late into the night, discussing the future possibilities, hopes, fears. One evening as they sat by the fire, Susan asked a question that had been growing in her mind. What will happen to you when this is over? When official contact is established? Will you go home? Zara was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. The mission parameters didn't specify. My role is to prepare the way, not necessarily to remain. Once diplomatic channels are established, my skills might be needed elsewhere. Susan felt a surprising pain at the thought of Zara leaving, I guess. I never considered that you might not stay. Zara studied Susan's face, reading her expression with growing skill. Would you want me to stay? Susan looked away, suddenly self-conscious. Of course. That is, I mean, you're my friend. And the work we are doing is important. Friend. Zara repeated the word, testing it. Our concepts are different on Valeria. We have colleagues, collaborators, communal groups. But friendship as humans understand it, with its emotional component, that is something. I have learned here something I value. Their conversation was interrupted by a call from Alan West, his voice urgent. Susan, we have a problem. Satellite imagery picked up something near your cabin last night. Military satellites, I have a contact at NASA who warned me. They're sending a team to investigate. Susan felt cold fear. How much time do we have? Not long hours. Maybe, Alan said. They've been monitoring the area for 3 days. You need to move, Zara. Now Susan hung up and turned to Zara. They know. Something is here. Not about you specifically, but they detected your communications with the ship. We need to leave. They packed quickly. Essential items only. Susan grabbed her research notes. Zara collected her samples and technology. Within 30 minutes, they were in Susan's car driving north toward a remote cabin owned by George Kennedy, the retired diplomat. He had offered it as a safe house if needed. As they drove, Susan called each member of their network, warning them, being careful with her words in case of monitoring. Take a vacation, she suggested to each one, planned long ago, starting immediately. The mountain roads were dark, winding. Zara's technology detected no pursuit vehicles, but Susan remained tense, her hands tight on the steering wheel. This was what they had feared from the beginning. Discovery before they were ready. Official involvement before their network was strong enough to shape the response. If I am captured, Zara said, breaking the long silence. Do not intervene. Do not reveal your involvement. My people will understand. The mission was always high risk. Susan shook her head fiercely. I'm not letting that happen. We have come too far, built too much. They reached the cabin near dawn. A simple structure, more rustic than Susan's home, but isolated deep in the mountains, miles from the nearest neighbor. George had stocked it with supplies enough to last weeks. A month passed in the mountain cabin. Their network continued to grow carefully, each new ally bringing unique skills and perspectives, their plan evolving, becoming more sophisticated. George Kennedy monitored the official investigation, which had stalled without concrete evidence. The military presence at Susan's cabin had been reduced, though surveillance continued. On a crisp autumn morning, Susan received a call from Elaine, the xenobiologist. I think it's time for the next step, she said. We have 20 people now. Scientists, diplomats, writers. All committed, all trustworthy. We need to start preparing the wider world. The group gathered at the mountain cabin, arriving in small groups over several days, using indirect routes to avoid detection. They represented a cross-section of human expertise and background, united by their knowledge of Zara and their commitment to peaceful contact. They sat in the cabin's main room, some on chairs, others on cushions on the floor. Zara at the center, her alien features now familiar to all of them. Susan beside her, their shoulders almost touching. We've reached a critical point, Susan began. We can't stay hidden forever. The military investigation has quieted but not ended. Sooner or later, they'll find evidence they can't ignore. We need to control how this happens, Alan West, the astronomer, agreed. The detection of alien presence should come through scientific channels, not military, not intelligence agencies. Science has international credibility, crosses political boundaries. Maria Lopez. The linguist nodded, adding, we need to prepare people psychologically. The idea of alien contact needs to become more acceptable, more normal before the reality is revealed. They discussed options, a peer-reviewed paper suggesting the possibility of alien microbes in Earth soil, using samples Zara had collected, astronomical observations hinting at artificial structures near distant stars, a series of science fiction stories, films, and art, preparing the cultural ground for the concept of benevolent contact. Sam Nguyen, the science fiction author, spoke up. The stories we tell matter. They shape expectations. I can help coordinate a cultural campaign, not obvious, not heavy-handed, but effective. Over time, Dr. Karina Patel, the medical researcher, raised another concern. We need to address health fears. The idea that alien biology might harm humans, disease transmission, immunity concerns. We need to preempt those fears with solid research showing Valerian biology poses no threat. They mapped out a timeline, a year of preparation, carefully placed scientific papers, cultural elements normalizing the idea of peaceful contact, building relationships with key individuals in government, science, and media, then controlled, revelation first to a small group of world leaders, then to the scientific community. Finally, to the public, George Kennedy, who had served as diplomat for 30 years, emphasized the need for international approach. This can't be one nation making contact. It needs to be global from the beginning, otherwise we risk political conflict, military escalation. Zara must be presented as coming to humanity, not to America or China or Russia. The discussion continued for 3 days. Detailed plans were made, contingencies considered, roles assigned, resources pooled. The network transforming from a loose collection of individuals into an organized movement with a clear mission. First contact on humanity's terms, peaceful, cooperative, beneficial throughout. The discussion Zara observed with growing admiration. These humans, with their short lives, their limited technology, their divided planet, were demonstrating wisdom she had not expected. The Valerian Council had anticipated either blind fear or naive acceptance. Instead, these humans showed nuanced understanding, practical caution balanced with genuine openness. On the final day of the gathering, as the group prepared to depart, returning to their normal lives to begin implementing the plan, Dr. Howard Chen, the physicist, raised one last question. What happens after contact is established, he asked. When the initial excitement fades, when the reality of different species trying to work together sets in. What then? The room fell silent, each person considering. The question. Zara stood, her tall form commanding attention. My people believe in knowledge as the highest good. We have technologies we can share. Medical advances, energy solutions, space travel capabilities. But we also have needs. Our world is dying. Some of my people will need a new home. We offer fair exchange, not charity. Susan added. We need to be honest about this from the beginning. This isn't just about exciting, new technology or scientific discovery. There will be challenges, integration, issues, resources to share, cultures to reconcile. It's not going to be easy, Alan spoke thoughtfully. History shows that when cultures meet, the results are mixed. Best case, we get exchange of ideas, art, science. Worst case, exploitation, conflict, even war. Our job is to ensure the first contact follows the better path. They agreed that honesty was essential, transparency about both benefits and challenges, no hiding the difficulties, no exaggerating the advantages. A realistic portrayal of what alliance between worlds would mean. As the meeting concluded, each member of the network departed with clear assignments. George would continue monitoring official investigations. Alan would begin preparing astronomical papers, suggesting evidence of extraterrestrial technology. Sam would coordinate with other writers and artists to shift cultural narratives. Karina would research comparative biology, preparing papers on theoretical alien physiology. Maria would develop linguistic frameworks for translating concepts between different species. Susan and Zara remained at the cabin, continuing their work and coordinating the network's efforts. They maintained secure communication with each member, tracked progress, adjusted plans as needed. Their days filled with purpose, their conversations deep, exploring the implications of what they were attempting. Weeks passed. The plan progressed smoothly. Alan published his first paper, subtly suggesting unusual energy signatures detected near a distant star. Sam connected with filmmakers and artists who began incorporating themes of beneficial alien contact into their work. Maria developed a theoretical framework for translating between different types of language structures. Then came the first setback. A military intelligence officer noticed patterns in the activities of network members, their scientific publications, their travel, their communications. Nothing obvious, just subtle connections that raised questions. George warned them that surveillance had been increased on several network members. Their phones monitored, their emails read, "We need to be more careful." George told Susan during a secure call. "They don't know what we're planning, but they've noticed something unusual. Patterns that don't make sense." Susan and Zara adjusted their approach. More security-coded communications, less direct contact between network members. They created cells, small groups working independently with limited knowledge of the overall plan. Only Susan and Zara held all the pieces. Despite the increased security, their work continued. Alan published his second paper, this one more specific, suggesting evidence of artificial structures orbiting a distant star. The scientific community responded with interest but skepticism, exactly as planned. Sam released a novel about first contact that received significant attention. Maria organized a conference on theoretical xenolinguistics, bringing together experts to discuss how communication with alien species might work. 6 months into their plan, Susan received an urgent call from George. They know, he said, his voice tight with tension. "Not everything, but enough. They've connected the dots between the energy signatures at your cabin and Alan's papers. They've been questioning people, following money trails. They suspect organized activity related to possible extraterrestrial contact." "How long do we have?" Susan asked. "Not long, days. Maybe," George replied. "They've expanded the investigation. Multiple agencies involved now. Intelligence, military, scientific. They know something significant is happening. They just don't know what exactly." Susan and Zara called an emergency meeting of core network members. They gathered in a secure location, a basement conference room beneath a university building owned by one of their allies. "The situation is critical," Susan explained. "They know something is happening. They suspect extraterrestrial involvement. The controlled disclosure we planned may no longer be possible." They discussed options. Accelerate. The plan moved directly to official contact before the investigation, force their hand go public immediately with everything they knew, hold their course and hope the investigation didn't move too quickly. The debate was intense, each option carrying significant risks. Maria argued for acceleration. "We always knew this was a possibility. The plan had contingencies for early disclosure. We should implement them now. Contact sympathetic government officials, scientific leaders, begin official talks." Karina disagreed. "Going official now before adequate preparation risks panic. Military involvement. Zara could be detained, studied, her ship seized." George offered a middle path. "What if we reveal part of the truth? Not Zara's presence, not yet, but enough to satisfy the investigators, enough to buy time. The evidence of alien technology, the possibility of contact, but presented as future prospect, not current reality." After hours of debate, they reached consensus, a partial revelation, carefully constructed, to direct the investigation away from Zara while maintaining momentum toward eventual full disclosure. The helicopters landed on the White House lawn under cover of darkness. Security was unprecedented. The building locked down. All non-essential staff sent home. Those remaining sworn to secrecy. Catherine Ward escorted Susan and Zara through silent corridors to the Situation Room, deep beneath the White House. Inside waited a small group: the President, Vice President, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, the Director of National Intelligence, the NASA Administrator, a few military officers, and scientific advisors. All stood as Susan and Zara entered. All stared with expressions ranging from shock to wonder to fear. The President recovered, first stepping forward. "My name is President Eleanor Marshall," she said, her voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. "Welcome to Earth." Zara bowed slightly, a gesture she had learned from human custom. "I am Zara, Chief Researcher and Diplomatic Representative of the Valerian people. I thank you for this welcome, though the circumstances are not what we had planned." For hours they talked, the President and her advisors asking questions, Susan and Zara explaining their first meeting, their growing network, their plan for controlled disclosure, the reason for Zara's mission, her worlds, Crisis. The potential for alliance throughout Zara demonstrated the calm wisdom that had impressed Susan from the beginning. She was neither subservient nor arrogant, neither evasive nor overwhelming in her revelations. She presented her people as, they were advanced but not perfect, powerful but in need, offering much but also asking for help. Susan watched with pride as Zara handled complex questions about Valerian technology, intentions, capabilities. She supported where needed, clarifying human concepts, adding context, explaining the network they had built. Gradually, she saw the initial fear in the room give way to cautious interest, even excitement among the scientists present. President Marshall was pragmatic above all. What exactly do your people propose, she asked. And what do they want in return? Zara explained again. The offer of technological exchange, medical advances that could cure human diseases, energy solutions that would end dependence on fossil fuels, space travel capabilities, beyond human current development, the request for sanctuary for a portion of her people whose world was dying, the need for human genetic material to develop a cure for the Valerian atmosphere. The president conferred quietly with her advisors, then announced her decision. This is too important, too consequential for one nation to decide. We will arrange an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council. Selected world leaders will be briefed. Until then, you will remain under our protection. Both of you, Susan and Zara, were taken to secure quarters within the White House complex. Comfortable rooms, but with guards outside. Visitors, limited communication, restricted. They were not prisoners exactly, but neither were they free. Their movements, monitored, their conversations recorded. 3 days of intensive debriefing followed. Teams of scientists, diplomats, intelligence officers, questioning them separately together. Their story verified, their network investigated, their claims tested. Zara's technology examined, though she maintained control of her most advanced devices. On the 4th day, Catherine Ward informed them that an emergency UN session had been arranged. World leaders informed, the next phase would begin. A helicopter took them to Andrews Air Force Base, a military plane to New York City. The journey made under highest security, protected from media observation, public knowledge. The United Nations General Assembly Hall had been cleared. All regular business suspended only. Security Council members selected world leaders and essential staff present when Susan and Zara were escorted inside. The room fell silent as the alien walked to the podium, her blue-tinted skin, her violet eyes, her tall, elegant form, impossible to mistake for human. The UN Secretary General welcomed her formally, then invited her to speak. Zara looked out at the assembled leaders, representatives of Earth nations. Different languages, cultures, histories, political systems united in this moment. By the revelation of life beyond their world, she began simply telling the story of her people, their advanced civilization, their dying planet, their discovery of Earth, humans, genetic compatibility, their hope for mutual benefit. She explained the technology they offered, the resources they could share, the knowledge they had accumulated over thousands of years of scientific development. She detailed what they needed in return: samples of human genetic material to develop atmospheric repair, system sanctuary for a portion of her people, perhaps 10,000 individuals who could no longer survive on their world. Questions followed, some hostile, some curious, some practical. How do we know your intentions are peaceful? A Russian diplomat asked. Zara answered calmly, if conquest were our goal, we possess technology that could have achieved it long ago. We come seeking alliance, not dominance. We offer fair exchange, not submission. We have studied your world for centuries. If we wished you harm, we would not reveal ourselves as I have done, standing alone before you. Chinese representative questioned further, what prevents you from taking what you need? Your technology is clearly superior. Why negotiate at all? Because lasting solutions require cooperation, not coercion, Zara replied. My people believe knowledge should be shared, not imposed. Understanding should be mutual, not forced. We seek partners, not subjects. For hours, the questions continued. Security concerns, economic implications, scientific opportunities, cultural impacts, religious perspectives. Susan was called to speak, explaining how she had come to trust Zara, how their network had formed, their vision for controlled introduction. Eventually, the Secretary General called for a recess. The world leaders needed time to consult with their governments, their advisors, their people. Susan and Zara were escorted to a private room to wait. "This is going better than I expected," Susan said once they were alone. "I saw genuine interest from many of them. Not just fear." Zara nodded. "They are leaders because they can see beyond immediate reaction to longer possibilities." Most of them, at least. 3 days of negotiations followed, Susan and Zara meeting with different delegations, answering questions, demonstrating technology, explaining potential Valerian representatives joined remotely, using communication technology that allowed them to appear as holograms in the UN chambers. Their presence adding weight to Zara's proposals, confirming her authority to negotiate. Meanwhile, the world learned of first contact, not through planned scientific papers or carefully placed cultural references, but through an official announcement from the United Nations Security Council brief. Controlled information revealing the existence of the Valerians, their peaceful intentions, the ongoing diplomatic discussions. No images of Zara were released. No details of the technology offered or requested. Just confirmation that humanity was not alone. The public reaction was mixed as expected. Fear, excitement, religious revival, conspiracy theories. Stock markets fluctuated. Protests formed outside government buildings. Social media exploded with speculation. But there was no panic, no widespread unrest. The careful groundwork laid by the network had helped even in this accelerated revelation. Alan West's papers, Sam Ningyan's stories, Maria Lopez's linguistic frameworks, all had prepared the ground, making the concept of benevolent contact more acceptable. On the 7th day, an agreement was reached, not final, not comprehensive, but a framework. The Valerian Accords, as they would come to be called, establishing principles for ongoing contact, scientific exchange, cultural missions, limited migration, a joint commission to oversee implementation, representatives from Earth nations and Valerian leadership working together. Susan watched as the Secretary General and Zara signed the preliminary documents. It wasn't the outcome they had planned when they met in the forest months ago. It was messier, more political, less controlled, but perhaps more real, more honest, more representative of the complex reality of human society. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Susan and Zara at the center of global attention, though their public appearances were limited, carefully managed. The network they had built now operating openly, their scientist members leading research initiatives, their diplomatic members facilitating international cooperation, their cultural members helping shape public understanding. 3 months after the signing of the Accords, the first official Valerian delegation arrived. 5 representatives landing in a ship larger than Zara's research craft. The landing broadcast, globally carefully staged in a neutral location, a UN-administered zone created specifically for this purpose. Susan stood beside Zara watching as the ship descended, its silver hull gleaming in the sunlight, its landing creating no flame, no smoke, just a soft blue glow as it settled on the prepared pad. The door opened. 5 Valerians emerged, tall, elegant, otherworldly, yet somehow familiar now to a world that had been preparing for this moment. Among them was Narration, chief scientist of the Valerian Council, the one who had selected Zara for the original mission. He approached them, his movements graceful. "Despite the stronger Earth gravity, you have accomplished more than we hoped," Narration said to Zara, his voice musical in the Earth air. "The Council commends you. Your name will be remembered in our history." Zara inclined her head in respect. "The success belongs not to me alone, but to the humans who chose cooperation over fear, understanding over ignorance, particularly to Susan Miller without whom first contact might have failed."